Hi folks, and welcome to this episode of the You, Me and ADHD podcast. This week we've got Rachel Wells on as a bit of a super guest actually. Rach is the head of culture and transformation at the Lyttleton Port Company. And I met Rach about, I would say maybe 24 months ago. And we talked I followed her, stalked her on LinkedIn, as I think this episode shows. And we've talked a number of times around ADHD, and she talks to us today on this episode about her journey as a parent of two twin boys who have recently been diagnosed with ADHD. To put it bluntly, Rachel has done the work. It's an amazing journey that she takes us through around the validation of a diagnosis for her kids, meaning that she wasn't the shit parent she thought she was, and in fact far from it. Watch and listen to how Rachel talks about her kids, her two boys, with so much love, with pride and with real heart. I think we're in the presence of a supermum here. And she's open and honest and at times raw, and she tells it as it is. And also she tells us what it's like as a parent, looking for reasons to blame yourself and how diagnosis helps with that.
Always pulling things apart to understand how does it work and building it back up, usually with a few screws missing.
Hey, welcome to this episode of the You, Me and ADHD podcast. I love how Rachel is laughing already. I reckon this is going to be a bunch of fun today. We've got a really cool guest which will bring a different perspective to how we've been talking about working, living and thriving as an ADHD positive person. Generally we talk about adults. But on the podcast today, we have Rachel Wells, who is the head of culture and transformation at Lyttleton Port Company. I've known Rachel for a wee while now, and we sort of connected over LinkedIn and got together and have had several coffees. And we've talked a wee bit about ADHD, and I'm going to let Rachel tell her story, her adventures in the world of ADHD positivity. But in looking at Rachel's LinkedIn profile, the first few lines are very much like mine. I'm like, oh shit, this is there's some similarities to this, and we're definitely not the same, but we've followed some very similar paths. And there's a particular line there which I'm going to pick up on soon with her, but I'm looking forward to a conversation around being a parent of kids with ADHD, and also where that may influence perspective on the potential of people within organisations. So let's see if we can get there, which I'm sure we will. Look, without further ado, Rachel Wells, welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much for your time, and it's great to be able to connect, especially you giving your time today in a busy work day where you actually work away from not only home but your home city. What's your situation?
Oh, but first of all, I just want to say thanks for having me. You said that there's someone really cool on, I'm going, who's the cool person? But no, actually, since working at Lyttleton Port, I tell you what, my kids think I'm the coolest mum because they think I drive the straddles and the vessels. But they'll figure that out one day. So yeah, so I live in Wellington, Whanganui-Tara, but then commute typically Monday to Thursday down to Christchurch. Mm-hmm. And yeah, shit, you know what? It's not easy. Mm. But look, in saying that, the role here is so worth it. And we've talked about it before about just how, working in an organisation where I work with people who are so authentic. So like, I was just talking to a guy out before I came to this meeting room about, his experience with having a kid with ADHD. And it's wonderful because it gives me something that I can connect with other people, guys that go out and girls. I think we've got about 3 of them who load our vessels and drive the cranes and that. And just, having these really open conversations is so powerful, and it really does build whanaungatanga. And it's something that since my two boys, now 8, they were 7 when they were diagnosed. I think since they were diagnosed with both with ADHD, one more extreme than the other, and one with dyslexia, it's just, it was a struggle, but it's actually got such a rich side and component to it.
Yeah. What did that diagnosis mean?
Oh, what it meant was that I realised that I wasn't the most shit parent in the world that I thought I was. To be honest, it used to go to the supermarket, Callum, and I used to see kids walking with their parents. And I used to say to my husband, why don't ours do that? And then I'd be standing there sort of with a state of anxiety, hearing one child in the animal department playing with all the squeaky toys, yelling at the other child that's roaming around some other department, and they're yelling at each other. So I used to tell them that there were like little cameras in the ceiling that could see what they were doing.
and there are.
Yeah, I know, and there is. But look, what it meant for me and my husband is that, we weren't shit parents. What we realised is how you parent children with ADHD is quite different to how you parent children who don't have ADHD. So it's been a real aha moment for us and for our boys. It's been massive for them because we've been very open and transparent right from the start with them. That being said, I had real issues with acceptance. I was your typical, I'm not going to medicate my children kind of parent. But thankfully, the process that I went through, I realised it wasn't about me, about the kids. So it's been a real eye-opener, and it's given me a sense of calm in the sense that I actually know how I can help them now.
Yeah.
And that's huge.
Okay. Yeah. So, right. Okay. So did it gave you, did it give you a reason for their behaviour? And how does that tie back to you feeling like you weren't the world's most shit parent? Because the one thing I've gleaned from our conversations in the past, Rachel, is that you are definitely not the world's shittest parent. If anything, the way you stand up for and advocate for your kids, and I think the way you embrace them, and at least in what you've told me, I think is just amazing. Like there's almost, I think you validate them as people, if that makes any sense. Would that be right?
Yeah, look, and I think that's way too complimentary. No, seriously, I think. So when we first found out the boys had ADHD, you get this report from the psychologist, which is heartbreaking because it's at the extreme. I remember sitting there reading this report, and I was at a conference, and I'm like, fuck, But and look, the other side of it too is that for us to get the 2 boys tested, we had to go private. We were really lucky. We got in to somebody during their lunch break. Otherwise, we were going to wait 8 months to go private.
Yeah.
And it cost 10 grand. So, a very privileged position to be able to afford that because a lot of parents can't, and that's where there's a real lack of support. But when we got that diagnosis, I then realised that it wasn't, the neurodiversity was not as a result of me having 1 glass of bubbles when I was pregnant. Because seriously, I was like, oh my God, I had a glass of wine when I was pregnant, and you constantly look to blame yourself. You think, right, what did I do? Or did I take too many Panadol? Or what, So you're constantly looking for blame and blaming yourself. But what it's given us is maybe not so much a reason, but just an understanding.
Yeah. And
then we've still got, the parents out there who I was once one. It was like ADHD. Really, it's just a naughty child. So learning to understand how the brain works has been remarkable because it's the same to a guy here, one of our cargo handlers. I said, to help centre a kid with ADHD, you give him a stimulant. He's like, what? I'm like, stimulant. I said, so if I'm out and my kids are playing up, I give them a mocha, I give them a coffee. And I get some really weird looks and the odd, bad parent comment.
Who cares?
Yeah, I know, it's like, screw you. But it really validates the fact that the brains work differently. And I think they'd be really open, Callum, and I'll share this with you guys. I can remember when the psychologist rang us and she said, look, I'm not into medication. She said, but your boys would do well medicated.
Mm-hmm.
And all the alarm bells went off for me because I think, oh, meds, which is why in our house we call it medicine, not medication. Small difference, but big difference.
Yeah.
And I said to the psych, who I didn't like, which wasn't helpful, I said to her, well, I don't want to medicate my children, and it's not right. And she said, what are you so scared of? And I said, well, they'll get labelled. And she said, what do you mean? I said, well, they'll get labelled as ADHD kids. And she said, but Rach, they already are. But they're labelled as naughty, disruptive, mischievous, fidgety, rude. And I think for me that was a moment because she said that they're not doing that intentionally.
Yeah,
And I think that's probably when I had my oh shit moment, and that's when I thought, this is not about me, because that's what it was about. It was about me. I didn't want to be seen to be the parent that educates my kids. And what she made me realise is that we needed to do this for them, and we have. And look, honestly, I've had phone calls from the school saying, what have you done with your children? And I'm like, oh, what have they done now? And but it's been about how they've been focused, centred, and the boys are very aware of it too. And I'll check in with them every now and then. I'll say to Noah, how's it going with your medicine? How's the focus going? He's like, which means good.
Yep.
And I said to Casey one day, I said, how's it going with your medicine? How's your focus going, sweetheart? Casey's a high-functioning one. Yeah, it's a pain in the ass, actually. You can't win a debate against him. But he said, Mum, it's really good. I said, oh, great. And what a lot of parents don't realise is kids with ADHD typically swear and typically steal, not because they want to steal, but they just like something, so they just take it, right? But anyway, he said to me one day, he goes, Mum, he said, it's like all that Lego in my bedroom. And I thought, God, where are we going with this? I said, what do you mean? He said, well, Mum, how I've got all those boxes of Lego and I've got like shit everywhere. I was like, yes, sweetie, you've got stuff everywhere. He goes, and how the colours are different? I'm like, yeah. He goes, well, now the colours are like in the right box. So in my head, I know where to go to find them. And I thought, oh my gosh, it's huge.
Yeah. So he's likening how he has collated and categorized things in his head to what he's done with the Lego. Yeah.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
I mean, that just speaks volumes to me. So yeah, it has been a challenge. I think, as I've mentioned to you before, the thing that, you go from being that parent questioning who you are as a parent and what you've done, I've swung full pendulum to being a huge advocate where I've had to call teachers on their behaviour, I've had to call after school care people, but to help them understand as well that when you've got a kid with ADHD who's been disruptive, you don't make them sit on a dot and not move on the floor.
Worst thing you can do.
Absolutely. You don't tell them to stop fidgeting, because that fidgeting occupies a part of the brain, as you know, that allows the other part to focus.
Yeah.
But I think there's still such a lack of understanding and awareness around it.
Yeah, absolutely there is. Yeah. What do you think then, now that you have a deeper understanding and your kids like nobody else will ever know them, what do you see even now at the age of 8 that may be realised, but who knows, it could change. But right now, what do you think their talents, their gifts, maybe even their wee superpowers might be right now.
I love how you say superpowers, and I love that because when they saw Vaughan Richardson, who's a paediatrician, he said to the boy, he didn't say, you've got ADHD, you've got this, deficit. He said, you guys know that you've got superpowers, right?
Awesome.
And they were like, whoa. So, Noah, ADHD, Noah has this incredible ability to do things like gardening, anything tactile, gardening, cooking, he knocks out a mean roast chicken.
Yeah, at 8.
Yeah, at 8. Yep. He's also incredibly empathetic. And he's just he's a really kind, gentle soul and very aware.
Is he dyslexic?
Yes.
Yeah, right. I reckon it's that combination of ADHD and dyslexia which builds that empathy, like massive empathy register there, with lots of people that I've met who have a combination of both. Yeah. Sorry, carry on.
Great. Yeah, and that dyslexia too. Casey, it was really high functioning. So we were trying to put together these little wooden dinosaurs. So Casey and I were sitting there, hopeless. And it's like, where does that bit go? And I don't know. Look at the picture. What does the instructions say? And then Noah turns around and goes, what about this, Mum? I said, how the hell did you do that? He didn't even look at the instructions.
No.
He said, I didn't need to. I just looked at the picture. Because they see in 3D. So for kids like Noah, things like, the best builders out there are typically ADHD dyslexic, right? They can't write, but shit, they can build. Architects, people who see things in these different dimensions. So, he's really creative. Casey, on the other hand, is really high functioning, but he has this scary wit where we'll be watching a kids movie, but it will have adult undertones and jokes in it. And Casey's sitting there laughing away, and I was like, "What? What's funny? I don't get it." Because Casey picks up on those nuances. Casey's also ambidextrous, so he sits there, and he's done it at school and freaked them out. And when he becomes impatient, if he's colouring in a picture, he'll just use both hands to get it done quickly.
Wow. Holy shit.
Yeah.
That's brilliant.
He's freaked out a few people. And when I saw him do it, I was like, what? But again, Casey's critical thinking skills are just off the chart.
Yeah.
I watch him when he's trying to do something, and he might be struggling, and I see him, a bit of a MacGyver looking around the house. What can I use? What can I utilise? What can I adapt? Always pulling things apart to understand how does it work and building it back up, usually with a few screws missing.
Yeah, but that's efficiency, right? You got some left over for another project. Yeah,
and as you said, energy to burn.
Yep.
When Casey he'd just turned 6. He said, Mum, I want to come out for a run with you. I said, sweetie, I don't think it's a good idea. I'm going to go around Mount Cow. It's about a 12K circuit. And he said, but I'd like to come. So I thought, okay, I'll just take a few extra treats just in case. He ran the whole way. And he did a 12K mountain run with his own little backpack.
As a 6-year-old?
As a 6-year-old, yeah. Noah does exterior races with me.
Yep.
And
your LinkedIn profile has them wearing medals and race numbers. What's that at?
Oh, shit. So that was actually a really simple event in Wellington. It was, I think it was an 11K run out at the Rimataka Incline. And I said to the boys, stay with Mum. And this is before they were on their meds. Stay with Mum. Yeah. Stay with Mum. Yeah. You're going to stay with Mum. Yeah. The gun goes off, boom, gone. So,
see you, Mum.
So the whole way, I was terrified I was going to lose one. And then Casey goes running back to the finish line, and I'm yelling out at him to stay at the finish line. He's like, yes, Mum. Get to the finish line. No, Casey. I found him at the food tent. And same as when we did Round the Bays. I've got a Garmin, so you can see.
Yeah.
If I run in a straight line. And I got home from doing Round the Bays because it was such a wonderful idea to do it with the boys. And my husband said, how did it go? I'm like, never fucking doing that again. He said, but what happened? And I've got different directions, and then they're crossing paths, and my Garmin data's like this. It was just...
You've done an extra 5K.
Yeah. But, getting them out, getting them to burn off energy.
Yeah.
Helping them realise when they're successful.
Mm-hmm.
And even with... a lot of people are real anti-tech with kids with ADHD. And I too was struggling with that because the kids played a lot of Minecraft.
Mm-hmm.
And I said it to a guy who's a developer, and he said, well, Rach, he said, you know that Minecraft is effectively 3D interactive Lego, don't you, with strategy built in behind?
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, okay. And they used to come up to me, Callum, the boys would come up and go, Mum, look at this world I've built. And I would go, oh, not interested, sweetie. That doesn't do it for me. But that's an achievement to them.
Yeah.
Now when they come up, I'm like, wow, that's great. How does it work? And
that's the thing. When you get into people's worlds, like literally, especially with Minecraft, but when you acknowledge with kids, especially with ADHD, that their achievement matters to you, like that speaks volumes of the relationship that you have. And also, what I love about Minecraft for kids as well is that they've already imagined that world. Minecraft is giving them the opportunity to build that, and for other people to see that, because if there's one thing, there's many frustrations of ADHD, but one of them is nobody can see what's going on in our head. And I think Minecraft for kids gives, and even for adults to be honest, gives us the opportunity to go, this is what it looks like inside my head. This is part of the world inside my head. No, it's not all farmland and big waterfalls and that sort of thing, but it's I think it's an offering, and it's opening up to go, this is what it's like.
And it's that creative.
Share it. Yeah.
So I really struggle with that, but then when I think of it as that, and it's just a different way for them to achieve and be successful. Mm-hmm. It's like, well, that's okay.
Yeah. And like, I love how you've already spotted those things, and you're nurturing those superpowers as well. That's really important to validate those. I love the way you do it. I love the way you get lit up when you talk about your kids as well. Yeah. And I know, look, there's got to be some frustrations that come with it, but now you kind of know the reasons why, and one of the reasons why is not that you're a bad parent, so it's not your fault in any way. In fact, there's no fault. In fact, if anything, I hope one day parents go, shit, I wish we could put that down to me, rather than go, oh, that's not my fault, but go, actually, as a result of us, our kids' brains are that way, and that's magic, because we have the stigma, and even the label of ADHD, a deficit, and that it's a disorder. Like, no, it's not. But we need to flip that and go with the positives. And I love how you're harnessing the positives. And one of the other ways that you're doing that is you're saying it's not my kid's fault either, because they're not choosing to behave that way. They're not choosing to be little shits. They've just got a lot of energy, and they get bored really easily. Like, they grasp concepts really, really quickly, quicker than most in class. And as a result, they need to move around, right? They go, oh yeah, I've got it. And they need some other... some other stimulation. Yeah, absolutely. So here's a question that I have asked a couple of guests on the podcast as adults, and I'd like to ask your take on this. If your boys woke up tomorrow morning without ADHD, what would you miss?
Oh, I'd miss being woken up at 5 o'clock in the mornings with the vacuum cleaner. Okay, so that's not uncommon, so they fight over cleaning. I'd miss the wittiness, the creativity, and look, I'd miss the noise. I say to people that I find it really hard because I'm getting hammered, because they're just like this 24/7. But then when it's quiet, I'm thinking, there's a massive void. I'd miss everything about them. Well, they wouldn't be my children if they didn't have ADHD. It's those little nuances and yeah, it would. Yeah, I couldn't imagine it.
So do you think
Yeah, I
it's a
couldn't
big part
imagine.
of who they are?
Oh, look, absolutely. But they've really embraced it as kids, which I love.
Oh,
You know,
awesome.
Noah was initially concerned about taking medication, but we've talked him through that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we talk about the things that they do and how their superpowers give them that ability to do that. And look, Vaughan Richardson was wonderful in really framing that up for us. Um, but you know, look, they still, you know, Noah has massive issues around reading and writing, but he's progressed really well.
Yeah.
You know, I've said to him, I said, sweetie, that won't hold you back in life. You know, you'll get through it. My
Mm-hmm.
reading sucked at his age as well. Um, but you know, they are who they are,
Mm-hmm.
and they wouldn't be who they were without,
Yeah.
you know, that diversity. Yeah.
Yeah,
Couldn't
cool.
imagine it.
Yeah. So through this sort of to me, like these are my words, not yours, Rach, but there's kind of been this enlightenment that's come from you having your kids to start with, them being who they are, and then with a diagnosis that's explained some stuff about them, and as a result, you've really built on your relationship. You've said this is what we need to focus on, and I reckon that you like the discipline as a parent that you're talking about is phenomenal, because some people will go, fuck it, it's just so hard. And if that is the if that's the diagnosis, well, shit, what am I going to do? But you're going, actually, no, that allows us to zero in on some stuff and to relax or relent or give up trying to battle this stuff and go, this is what matters. Yeah?
Yeah.
So then what also I'd like to bring in the big aspect of you and your experience and your professional history around HR and transformation and being essentially in that sort of people capability profession for a while. How is your learning and experience with people dear to you with ADHD, who are ADHD positive, how has that changed or influenced how you view people and potential in the workplace? I love how in your LinkedIn profile, there's a line there that says that you're passionate about enabling an organisation to reach its potential through its people. What's the connection between that and your knowledge now of ADHD and people with ADHD, if anything?
Yeah, hey, look, that's a really good question. I think there's a couple of sort of strands to that. One is about understanding what potential is.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I don't want to offend people, but potential isn't, you know, middle upper class white who have come from a good school. You know, some of the people that I've worked with in the past have had some of the most challenging upbringings.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and such diverse, you know, exposure. We have people here in our organisation at LPC who are now really starting to talk up, and I mean, I'm talking staunch union people who are really being now open as we've started more of this conversation around, hey, well, you know, I used to have drug and mental health issues, and this is what I've done. I think for me, it's about, how do you define potential?
Mm-hmm.
Because, you know, we have our good 9-box grid, which drives me bonkers, which we jam people in. You know, but potential is so much more than that. I don't think we've really explored that yet in the professional, or not enough. You know, when I look at some of the people that I've had in my teams, I've had people where I've looked at them and I thought, well, there's something different about them. This is in years gone by. And it's only now that I'm realising that they were potentially on the spectrum. Mm-hmm. Worked with a wonderful woman at MFE who was very open about being diagnosed as an adult with ADHD and how that's helped. A lovely woman in my team at MFE, her partner was going through that whole process. So I think sort of going down that route, what it's, as an individual, as a leader, or as an HR professional, it's given me a better appreciation for the support that parents need in the work environment,
nice.
Or even partners. So, and look, there's excuse the expression, but there's fuck all support out there anyway for parents with ADHD, you've got to be in the 1% of the extreme to get support publicly, because it's so underfunded.
And for the record, I think that's a highly appropriate way of framing it. There is fuck all.
It's just
That's right.
Look, I had a woman, a friend who has supported us endlessly, who has a boy on the spectrum and extreme ADHD. And she had to call her neighbours to help with her boy who was having an episode because CAMS didn't respond because they deemed it not serious enough that he was standing on the roof of their house, potentially looking to jump off. And the police wouldn't respond either because it wasn't a police issue, it was mental health. Yet she was calling CAMS saying, I desperately need support, just wasn't there. So what I find is you get support from those who are going through it. What I've discovered in the work environment is I have here at LPC, as I did at MFE, as did it at MB, is there's so many employees out there struggling with parenting their children with ADHD, and they don't know what to do. They don't want to talk about it. So I've been gobsmacked at the number of people that have come to me and said, hey, I'm having these challenges with my daughter. How do you do this? Or it might even be having an employee ring me and say, Roach, I can't come into work today because my partner hasn't been able to get his medication and he's having a rough time and I need to be with him. And that's no different to her partner having a physical injury that you can see that needs to be dealt with.
No.
So I think it's just, it's really helped me understand and to better support other parents in the work environment, as well as partners who have partners going through this as well. So that's been huge. Yeah, it's a very different lens.
That's cool.
5 years ago.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, and you've worked in a number of varied workplaces in a number of sectors, both private and public sector, and different industries as well, which I love. Like what I gather from you and your work history is that you're quite a curious person, and I think what I've noticed is you're not only curious in nature, but you're curious about the future. And am I right in thinking you're curious about what part you can play in the future, especially if that's around the future of work, the future of workplaces, the future of how we harness people and their superpowers?
Oh, look, absolutely. And I think, if it wasn't for the boys, I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be thinking about this. We've had COVID come along, which has really challenged our ways of working, our mental health, how we support each other. But there's and there's a massive gap there around how do we support our people in the workplace who are going through this with their children or their mokopono, because we have that a lot in other areas. So, what are some support mechanisms? We have the rainbow support mechanism, we have Māori, we have Pacifica, we have all these groups, and I'm going, where's the support wraparound, mums, dads, partners, whatever, who have this going on in their life and are struggling to deal with it, because it's not there. So, and look, to your point too, Callum, the paediatrician, when we saw him, he looked at my husband and I go, so which one of you? Like, pardon? And he said, if it's passed down genetically, it can come down from the male side. And when I look at my career history, and we've discussed this, I go and I do a job and I just get bored. So I move on to the next thing. Then I get bored, I go on to the next thing, which, is an absolute attribute of ADHD.
Yeah, for
so
sure.
I have no doubt I'm on that spectrum.
You've also, look, you do, and I'm no expert. It's not for me to even suggest or diagnose, but come on, Ironman triathlon. who's got the excess of energy?
I know that's slightly bonkers. But yes, but I think the point though too here, Callum, is actually there's a bit of it in all of us. Yeah, because there is, but it's just a different spectrum of that. And how we harness that.
The okay, we'll wrap up soon, Rach. But I wonder if is there anything that you've noticed or realised that we just don't do well in terms of harnessing people at work with who are neurodiverse? Like, that I've got a real issue with the employee life cycle, because it's built on that one size fits most, and that there's an expectation that most people will follow the same path and journey through into, within and out of the organisation, right? And I don't think that necessarily takes into account neurodiverse brains and how people experience not only the world and their day-to-day, but the workplace as well. Do you have any insights or just ideas, anything you've noticed around how we could, maybe how HR, but how leaders, employers could do better with staff who are, say, ADHD positive?
Yeah, look, absolutely. Oh,
go on, get that.
Just my boss ringing. It's all good. She's great.
Bit busy.
Yeah, look, that's a really interesting question. I just think of down here, I was running some. I call them design sprints. God, I shouldn't have called them that. But anyway, yeah, I was starting to help the business explore this thing called culture, because they think it's soft and fluffy, and they don't realise that culture determines whether their strategies get fits. Culture will determine whether they're listened to out there.
Mm-hmm.
And I invited somebody into one of the sessions, and somebody said to me, "Well, don't invite them. You can't have them in the room." And I said, "Why?" And I said, "Oh, they'll be really disruptive, they're inattentive, and they're a complainer." I was like, "Okay, great, right.
Bring them in."
Yeah, absolutely. And we did. And we had him in the room, and this guy is pretty hardcore. Yet I was just gobsmacked when I got an email after the session saying, "Thank you so much for inviting me, and thank you for listening." So that was like one example. I had another example with an employee who came to me and said, "Hey, that stuff we talked about in that session?" I was like, "Yeah." He said, "I want to take that home, and I want to have a conversation with my son who's struggling in this space." And we're talking about culture and behaviours. We're talking about ADHD, and he said, "But I can use it at home and make the environment better." And the conversation we're having now at LPC, which I think is just fantastic, is we're having the conversation around how do we redesign our whole employee experience. And when I talk about employee experience here, people go, "Employee what? What's that?" So it's a really new concept here. But it's around how do we design that experience for people who are neurodiverse? How do we design that experience to embrace and overlay tikanga? How do we make it inclusive? So I said to the team, I said, "Hey, this is cool. I'm now going to make you all go through a whole lot of employee experience design school, and we're going to do this together. And we're going to learn, and we're going to bring it back, and then we're going to redesign this." So that's been great. To think that we can do that in a port, has just been fascinating. So,
and just to harness like different perspectives, and to utilise that people will come at things a bit differently, and it's not necessarily wrong, because we want everyone to have the same thoughts, but we want people to bring their experiences and the way they do approach things to make sure that we're catering for the people who aren't here yet, right? I think that's part of the plan is around how are we designing and setting up our organisation for people who aren't yet employees, and what does that look like? Yeah,
and look, we've got a long way to go. But I loved it when I was about to have a conversation with Paul Wood about mental fitness in the work environment. So I went out to one of my foremen and said, "Hey, I'd love it if you could come on this call." He's like, "Why?" I said, "Because you're an advocate in this space." He's like, "Am I?" I'm like, "Absolutely." I said, "You've got that lived experience. That's what I want in the room." And again, they'll go, "Well, I'm only a foreman, or I'm only a cargo handler." And I'm like, "No, you're not only. You are who you are, and what you bring will help us design solutions that will meet more than just that sort of, white middle class that we're designed for.
Yeah, you're the core of the organisation, right?
Yeah.
You do what we're here to do. Yeah.
Mm.
Wonderful. Hey, thank you so much. I reckon when people watch or listen to this, they'll go, "Oh shit, she's onto it. I want to be a bit like her. I want to do some stuff, or I want to pick her brain a little bit." So you might have set yourself up here, and we'll give you a few weeks. There's a few weeks before this one will be published, but if you want them to, how can people get in touch with you?
Oh, look, people are welcome to connect via LinkedIn. You know, I've got all my contact details in there, email, phone number. So they're welcome to call me. You know, if I can support anyone, as people have supported me, absolutely. And, you know, and to make it okay to stand on the top of your roof and yell out with confidence that, you know, my kids have ADHD and to be proud of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good for you. Like, as you were relaying some of those stories there, like I've even got them now. I get goosebumps just hearing you talk about your kids and how you don't have to view this through a negative lens, and how yes, there are frustrations, and yes, your kids get frustrated because they struggle with stuff and expectations and fitting within the box and the mold and that sort of thing. But with that comes so much gold, so much goodness, so much humanity. And what we don't necessarily see with kids that are fidgeting or disruptive is we see that outer layer, but we don't see the fact that those kids have big hearts, and harnessing that and letting them show that, getting past ourselves and our own stereotypes and judgments and that sort of thing, and seeing the kid is.
And how hard is it for a kid? I mean, a pediatrician said, you know, being a kid with ADHD in primary school is like living in a barrel and having shit thrown at you on a daily basis.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm more than happy for anyone to reach out. And just, you know, a closing comment is, it is fucking hard. And I too have had those days where I've sat in a room and just cried, or I've had to walk away from the situation because, you know, the kids, when they're coming off their meds, it's like Noah's a 7 coming into crash land. But we know how to now soften that landing for them.
Wow. That's a great metaphor. Great way of viewing it. Yeah. Yeah. Hey, look, thank you so much. You're an absolute champion. Keep being amazing. This has been a wonderful conversation. I really appreciate your time. Go well, stay safe, and stay in touch. Well, there you have it. Thanks so much for listening to this episode of the You, Me and ADHD podcast. My hope is that it's been worth your time, of some value, that it's been interesting or even enlightening, perhaps. Hey, if nothing else, I hope it's been entertaining. I really appreciate you showing up. You see, I really want to do some serious damage to the stigma and stereotype that ADHD is bad, that it's wrong, and that those of us born with ADHD brains are somehow broken, because we're none of those things. And you can help with this too. If you were to like, comment, or even share a link to any one of these episodes or the entire podcast, just to one person, I'll be a happy little ADHD camper. And I love camping. I do. So thanks for stopping by. I hope to see you soon. Stay in touch. Get in touch in any way you feel the need. And I look forward to chatting. Until then, peace, love, and heaps of impulsivity. Take care. Bye.